Amidst the sands of time and the ancestral lands of Canaan, a story emerges that spans centuries, speaking directly to our hearts. Today, we dive into the life of Joseph, the dreamer, beginning with his childhood and the favoritism that shaped his destiny in ways he could never have imagined. Joseph was born into a complex family, the last child of Jacob and Rachel. His arrival was celebrated as a miracle, for Rachel, Jacob's beloved wife, had remained barren for many years. This birth not only brought joy to Jacob, but also intensified the familial rivalries in a home already divided by jealousy and competition among wives and brothers. His father Jacob did not hide his predilection, perhaps born out of deep affection for Rachel. This preference was symbolized by a remarkable gift, a coat of many colors. More than a garment, this coat became a symbol of distinction and destiny, a visible sign of Jacob's blessing and favor towards Joseph. But what should have been an act of love ended up sowing discord. The colorful coat, amidst the simplicity of his brother's attire, not only highlighted Joseph in the eyes of his father, but also ignited a flame of envy and resentment in his brothers' hearts. These feelings intensified even further as events unfolded, marking the beginning of a journey of trials and triumphs. Joseph, still young, experienced dreams that were more than mere nocturnal constructs of the mind. They were prophetic visions, seeds of a grandiose destiny awaiting him. In one such dream, Joseph saw himself in the field, binding sheaves with his brothers. Suddenly, his sheaf rose and stood upright, while his brother's sheaves bowed down before it. In another dream, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to Joseph. These visions foretold a trajectory of ascent and leadership, but also sowed conflict, for they predicted that Joseph would rule over his own family. When Joseph shared these dreams with his brothers, the reaction was anything but warm. Already wrapped in resentment for the paternal favoritism, the brothers saw these dreams as an unbearable affront. "Will you indeed reign over us?" they asked, their envy and anger growing with every moment. The revelation of these dreams not only exacerbated the existing tension, but also marked Joseph as a target of conspiracies within his own family. The envy and resentment fermented in his brothers' hearts reached their apex when Joseph is sent by his father Jacob to check on their well-being and that of the flock. Finding himself far from home, in foreign lands, Joseph becomes vulnerable, a lamb among wolves. The brothers, seeing him approach, plot his ruin, each justifying to themselves this final act of betrayal. The decision is made. Joseph is brutally stripped of his colorful tunic, a symbol of his status and dreams, and thrown into an empty pit. The darkness of the pit serves as a prelude to the greater darkness awaiting him. As Joseph cries out for mercy, his brothers sit down to eat, their hearts hardened by envy, deaf to his pleas. The plot thickens when Ishmaelite traders pass by. Judah, one of the brothers, proposes selling him as a slave rather than letting him die. This decision, though cruel, carries within it the seeds of divine purpose that none of them could foresee. Joseph is sold for 20 pieces of silver and taken to Egypt, far from his homeland and the arms of his father. What makes this part of Joseph's story particularly touching is not just the injustice of the betrayal, but the way Joseph faces his new reality. Stripped of his identity, family, and freedom, he embarks on a journey that would test and reveal the depth of his character and faith. Joseph's journey to Egypt is fraught with uncertainties and dangers, but it is also a journey of inner growth. It is here that Joseph begins to transform, not because of his brother's betrayal, but despite it. Egypt, with its pyramids and sphinxes, would be the backdrop where Joseph, the slave, would begin to ascend towards the fulfillment of the dreams that had been given to him by God previously. Joseph, now entering a chapter that tests his faith, character, and integrity like never before. His rise and fall in the house of Potiphar in Egypt. Arriving in Egypt as a slave, Joseph is purchased by Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. His journey, marked by adversity from the pit to the slave market, finds a new chapter in this strange and opulent territory. Despite his condition, Joseph does not succumb. With skill, intelligence, and a divine presence that favors him, he quickly stands out in Potiphar's house. His dedication and competence do not go unnoticed, and soon he is promoted, assuming the management of all of Potiphar's household. Joseph handles this responsibility with the same honor and integrity he demonstrated in every phase of his life, gaining Potiphar's trust and respect. However, Joseph's prosperity attracts a new kind of challenge: the unwanted attention of Potiphar's wife. Captivated by Joseph's appearance and character, she attempts to seduce him. Joseph, faithful to his God while maintaining the trust placed in him by Potiphar, rejects her advances. His refusal, grounded in integrity and fear of God, triggers a series of events that would lead him once again to a test of faith. Falsely accused of assault by Potiphar's wife, Joseph sees his fortune change drastically. From the position of a trusted steward, he is thrown into the depths of an Egyptian prison. This blow could have destroyed many, but Joseph remains unwavering in his faith and integrity. In prison, just as in Potiphar's house, the divine presence with Joseph is evident. He finds favor in the eyes of the jailer, just as he had with Potiphar. Joseph is entrusted with responsibilities within the prison, and even in the darkest conditions, his light does not dim. It shines even brighter. In the darkness of the prison, far from being a place of total despair for Joseph, it becomes a setting where his inner light shines with even greater intensity. Among the many prisoners, two stand out in our story: Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker, both fallen from grace and confined to the same dungeon as Joseph. One day, Joseph finds them troubled by dreams they had the night before. With a sensitivity that overflows with compassion and a divinely granted gift, Joseph offers to interpret their dreams. The cupbearer narrates first, describing a dream where he sees a vine with 3 branches that bud and blossom, resulting in clusters of grapes that he squeezes into a cup in Pharaoh's hand. Joseph interprets, in 3 days the cupbearer would be restored to his position, serving Pharaoh as before. Then the baker, encouraged by the positive interpretation of the cupbearer's dream, shares his dream with Joseph. He saw 3 baskets of white bread on his head, and birds were eating from the breads in the highest basket. Joseph's interpretation, however, brought a grim omen. In 3 days, the baker would be executed by Pharaoh. And so it happens. 3 days later, on Pharaoh's birthday, the cupbearer is restored to his position, while the baker faces the tragic fate predicted by Joseph. The accuracy of Joseph's interpretations reveals not just his gift, but also a deep connection with the divine, a keen perception that transcends common understanding. Continuing with Joseph's extraordinary trajectory, we arrive at the moment of his spectacular rise to power. This part of the story not only highlights the impressive manner in which Joseph's fate unfolds, but also illustrates the providential hand guiding his life through the deepest adversities. After interpreting the dreams of the cupbearer and the baker, Joseph remains in prison, but his destiny is about to change radically. Pharaoh, troubled by enigmatic dreams, desperately seeks someone who can decipher them. It is then that the cupbearer, remembering the accuracy with which Joseph interpreted his dream, recommends him to Pharaoh. Joseph is brought before Pharaoh, who recounts 2 disturbing dreams. In the first, 7 fat cows are devoured by 7 lean cows. In the second, 7 full and good ears of grain are devoured by 7 thin and scorched ears of grain. With humility and wisdom, Joseph explains that the dreams are, in fact, one and the same, and reveal what God is about to do. 7 years of great abundance in Egypt will be followed by 7 years of famine so severe that it will erase all memory of the abundance. Joseph then advises Pharaoh to act prudently, suggesting the appointment of a wise and discerning administrator to oversee the storage of food during the years of abundance, to prepare Egypt for the coming years of famine. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom and clarity, Pharaoh sees in him not just an interpreter. He said to his servants, "Can we find a man like this, in whom is the Spirit of God?" As a result, Joseph is appointed as governor of Egypt, second in command only to Pharaoh himself. From slave to prisoner, and now to governor, Joseph's rise to power is nothing short of miraculous. He is tasked with implementing his own strategy for preparation for the coming years, a task he executes with extraordinary competence, saving not only Egypt but also neighboring nations from the devastation of famine. Joseph's ascent to power in Egypt is a powerful testament to his faith, perseverance, and wisdom. His story teaches us that, even in the darkest moments, there is the possibility of redemption and elevation. Joseph did not allow resentment or despair to take hold of his heart, even when wronged. Instead, he maintained his integrity, worked diligently, and trusted that his life had a greater purpose, even when that purpose was not clear to him. We now enter a chapter of Joseph's life that highlights his exceptional competence and divinely inspired wisdom, the wise administrator. Having been elevated to a position of immense power in Egypt, Joseph faces the colossal challenge of managing a country on the brink of an unprecedented crisis. His management during the 7 years of famine not only proves his extraordinary ability as an administrator, but also solidifies his legacy as a visionary and compassionate leader. Joseph, recalling the dreams of Pharaoh that he himself interpreted, initiates an ambitious plan of preparation. During the 7 years of abundance, he implements a system of collecting and storing grains so effective that it accumulates enough grain to sustain Egypt during the years of scarcity that would follow. Joseph orders the construction of large storehouses in the cities and appoints administrators to oversee the collection of 1/5 of all of Egypt's produce. His foresight and meticulous planning transform Egypt into a beacon of hope for the surrounding region when the famine finally arrives. As food reserves in neighboring countries begin to deplete, people from all parts come to Egypt, seeking to buy grain. Joseph then opens the storehouses and sells the grains to the people, not only saving the Egyptian population from starvation, but also attracting people from distant nations who seek refuge and sustenance under his administration. During this critical period, Joseph demonstrates not only unmatched administrative skill, but also a deep understanding of the responsibility that comes with power. He manages the crisis in a way that ensures both Egyptians and foreigners have access to the necessary resources to survive. Joseph's saga now leads us to one of the most thrilling and transformative moments in his story, the reunion and reconciliation with his brothers. This stage not only closes the cycle of a long journey through trials and triumphs, but also offers us deep reflection on forgiveness, redemption, and the ability to transform the most painful wounds into bridges for healing and understanding. As famine spreads through Canaan, Joseph's brothers, driven by necessity and despair, travel to Egypt in search of sustenance. Unaware of the true identity of the Egyptian governor who controls the grain distribution, they find themselves face to face with Joseph, the brother they had sold into slavery so many years before. Joseph, immediately recognizing them, is overcome with conflicting emotions, the old pain from past betrayals and the undying love for the blood tie that still united them. Joseph then decides to subject his brothers to a series of tests to probe their hearts and verify if they had changed. Initially, he accuses them of being spies, putting them in a position of vulnerability and fear, reflecting in a way the vulnerability that Joseph felt when he was betrayed and sold by them. Later, he demands that they bring his youngest brother Benjamin to Egypt as proof of their honesty, creating a situation that mirrors his father's favoritism and the resentment it had generated among them. When Benjamin is finally brought to Egypt, Joseph devises one last test. He has a silver cup hidden in Benjamin's baggage, accusing him of theft. By offering the other brothers the chance to leave Benjamin and return safely to Canaan, Joseph closely observes their reactions. In an act of courage and solidarity, Judah offers to stay in Benjamin's place, sharing that their father Jacob could not bear to lose his youngest son, just as he thought he had lost Joseph. Jacob could not bear to experience mourning again, since both Joseph and Benjamin were sons of Rachel, Jacob's former wife and favorite. After the tests and trials, Joseph can no longer hide his true identity, nor suppress the overwhelming emotions that surge within him as he sees his brothers speaking among themselves that they deserve to be going through this because of the evil they did to Joseph, without knowing that they were in Joseph's presence and that Joseph understood what they were saying among themselves. In a scene charged with pure emotion, Joseph reveals himself to his brothers. He requests that all servants leave the room, leaving him alone with his brothers. And then with tears he can't hold back, he says, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" The brothers' reaction is one of shock and fear, fearing the vengeance Joseph might seek. But Joseph, moved by a heart that has learned to look beyond pain and resentment, quickly seeks to calm his brothers, drawing closer to them and explaining that what happened was part of a larger plan. "Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." Joseph expresses his forgiveness in such a complete and sincere manner that it leaves no room for doubts or fears. He acknowledges the divine hand guiding the events of his life, turning evil into good, and emphasizes that his journey to Egypt, all the suffering, the separation, and the ascent to power, was intended to preserve many lives, including that of his own family. The news that Joseph is alive and the governor of Egypt reaches Jacob, the father, awakening in him a renewed and incredulous joy. Jacob's journey to Egypt to reunite with Joseph after so many years is marked by emotion and tears. The reunion of Joseph with his father is a scene of deep tenderness and redemption. Jacob, who believed he had lost his beloved son forever, now embraces him again, in a demonstration that true love and hope can indeed overcome any adversity. This moment of revelation and forgiveness in Joseph's life teaches us about the power of forgiveness to heal the deepest wounds and restore relationships that seemed irrevocably broken. Joseph chooses to forgive completely, freeing his brothers from the weight of guilt and opening the doors to a new phase of unity and prosperity for the entire family. Reflecting on Joseph's revelation and forgiveness, we are invited to consider areas of our own life where forgiveness might be the pathway to healing and reconciliation. With forgiveness granted and old wounds healed, Joseph invites his family to live in Egypt, offering them refuge and security in the land of Goshen, a fertile area ideal for their flocks and agriculture. The migration of Jacob's family to Egypt is not just a physical journey, but also symbolizes the transition to a new phase of unity and prosperity. Under the protection of Joseph, now a powerful governor of Egypt, the family experiences a period of great abundance. The land of Goshen flourishes under their care, and the children of Israel thrive, multiplying and growing stronger. This period marks an era of peace and prosperity, where, under the shadow of past adversities, Joseph's family builds a new legacy of hope and promise for future generations. The life of Joseph's family in Egypt, particularly in Goshen, teaches us about the power of restoration and the security that family love provides. Demonstrating leadership and compassion, Joseph ensures that his family not only survives, but thrives in a foreign land, fulfilling the promise of a bright future that his prophetic dreams had foretold. Joseph lives to the age of 110 years, witnessing the flourishing of his family in Egypt. Before his death, Joseph makes a request to his brothers, assuring them that God would visit them and lead them back to the promised land given to their ancestors. He asks that his bones be carried out of Egypt when that day comes, symbolizing his continuous faith in God's promises to the people of Israel. Joseph's death is not the end, but the sealing of a legacy that would continue to influence generations. His life, filled with adversities turned into victories, becomes an eternal testament to the power of faith, forgiveness, and divine providence. Joseph's request that his bones be taken back to the promised land reflects his unbreakable bond with the divine promise, a link that would remain as a compass for his people even after his death. Joseph's legacy, therefore, transcends his own life, influencing not just the story of his family, but the trajectory of the people of Israel as a whole. His story inspires us to consider the legacy we leave, how the adversities we face and overcome can inspire and guide those who come after us. Joseph knew that God would give the land of Canaan to the descendants of Jacob, now called Israel, his father. Thus, with that faith, Joseph enters the gallery of faith heroes of Hebrews chapter 11, who awaited the promise of a heavenly and eternal homeland that Christ Jesus will grant to those who place their faith and trust in him. If Joseph's journey, from the depths of betrayal to the pinnacle of forgiveness and prosperity, inspired you, subscribe to the channel, like, and share this video. Leave in the comments how this story touches your life and what you wish your legacy to be. Join us as we continue to explore biblical stories that inspire, challenge, and transform. Joseph leaves us a legacy of hope, demonstrating that regardless of the circumstances, our faith, integrity, and love can guide us through the greatest adversities, leading us to a future of promise and prosperity. Stay tuned for the next episode, where we will continue to bring stories that illuminate, inspire, and enrich our lives.